Hey guys, how's it going? Value Venture Investing here today. So today we're going to be talking about Virgin Galactic, SPCE. They just released their Q3 2020 earnings, and they're quite interesting. Taking a look at the stock right now, after hours, we're up about 3% as of recording this. Stock has gone up quite a bit today, but also keep in mind we've seen the market just kind of on a tear the last 2 days. I think this is related to maybe the results of the elections going to be over soon here, and maybe a little bit of relief in the market as to what's going on, but that's a topic for another video. So Virgin Galactic had its earnings, so today you guys probably want to know the top line items, what happened. I listened to the conference call, and I also went through the presentation and some interesting stuff in there as well. So starting out here, I thought this was a kind of a good way to show it to you guys. I have Q1 2020, Q2 2020, Q3 2020, so we almost have a full year in the 2020 for us right now to take a look at. So again, this is the quarter that we're looking at right now, Q3 2020. Again, we had $0 in revenue, but this was to be expected from last quarter. They told us this as well. Net income also got much worse at negative 76.9, so almost negative $77 million loss. However, they're not generating any income right now, and they're basically just ramping up test flights and building their spacecraft. So of course that's to be expected. Cash was the main bright spot here, and I think that's probably why the stock is up right now. Although they did issue equity to get that, but they're not now at 742 million. 360 million quarter before, and then 419 on Q1. So we've seen some improvement there. Definitely good news, but of course that was generated from an offering of shares. The deposits here, this is probably the brightest point as well. If you guys watched my last video, you probably remember that I was pretty bearish on it because it seemed like customer deposits were dropping. We actually seen them increase by $1.45 million from last quarter. We're at $83.19 million, and it was only $81.73 million a quarter ago. And from the Q1 to Q2 of this year, we saw that drop by 1.53 million. So it's nice to see that increase again. And I think that these are probably the main reasons that you're seeing the stock respond positively right now, and that it might be doing pretty well the next couple days and going forward. So right now, let's get into the presentation because there's a couple other things there I'd like to talk about. So in terms of the third quarter of 2020 milestones, they're saying progress was made on preparing space flight systems for the fall test flight. And again, they talked about this last quarter. This was pushed forward a month, so hopefully it happened, but you can review the check marks there in terms of what they did regarding that. They also prepared the second Spaceship 2 vehicle for rollout. And there was different things that they did as well there. So they're making progress on that. But of course, they're talking about the impacts of COVID-19 here. You guys can pause the screen on this one if you want, but this is, the oddball, the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. So probably that's the reason we've seen things slow down a little bit, but something to keep in mind there. The CEO also gave his 100-day impressions, or his 100-day insights, he called them. These I was kind of like, okay, this is pretty generic. A lot of his remarks were very prepared. We have such a diverse and talented team. Yeah, that's great, but I think most people would like to focus on the actual results. But those are the things that he mentioned there. The next thing he talked about was the next chapter. First point here, fly thousands and thousands of people to space. I thought that was kind of a weird way of saying it. Again, pretty generic. And not too specific. However, they did get a little bit more specific in saying that they're embarking on a multi-year effort targeting 400 flights per year per spaceport. So this could be where we actually see the stock valuation get a little bit more reasonable. I know you guys, if you've watched my other videos, probably think that I think that the stock price is overvalued. But if you can do that and also have $1 billion of revenue opportunity per spaceport, that's the next bullet point here that I have highlighted. You could see this valuation start to become a little more reasonable, and actually very reasonable. And this might be something that drives the stock up. It's hard to say. We're so far off right now. We're going to have to see what happens going forward. But it was definitely interesting, something interesting that they mentioned during the conference call. And they also said the fully utilized spaceport could be a powerful economic engine. And the only reason I mentioned that point is because one of the questions that was asked during the conference call was kind of like, how do you justify that $1 billion revenue? It seems they're going to have a lot of other value-added things. Maybe if you bring the whole family in and such to the spaceport. So they weren't very specific with that, but it looks like they've got other plans going forward. The CEO also talked about some more of his insights here, talking about key roles leading transition from R&D to production. Didn't really talk about many of these people, except for this one guy named Tom rather. And I kind of found this one pretty interesting because this guy came from Skunkworks, Lockheed Martin. Now he's the Senior Vice President of Programs and Engineering. Put a little check mark there, because if anybody, who comes to the company that could, generate interest and actually generate some pretty significant technology, that guy really piqued my interest there. And obviously that's why they mentioned him. There's these other individuals as well that you can look into further, but again, they didn't really mention any of them. Now the big news here, the flight test program update. So again, November 2020, this was originally supposed to be October 2020, got pushed back presumably because of what's going on right now. They're saying the first space flight from Spaceport America, this is going to have 2 pilots, it's going to have a rocket-powered test flight, and also this one's going to generate revenue from NASA payloads. Someone asked, how much is this going to be? They said, well, maybe a ballpark at around $400,000. Something like that. Of course, that's not going to make much of a difference in terms of their financials, but at least they're generating some revenue. Also, the second space flight is going to be Q1 of next year. 2 pilots plus 4 employees in the cabin, and again, rocket-powered test flight. And of course, the Q1 again of 2021, they're going to have a third space flight. This is going to have 2 pilots plus passengers in the cabin. It's a rocket-powered test flight, and also Sir Richard Branson's first space flight. So that's the one that I think most people are, being wondering about. Last quarter, again, they said it was going to be Q1 of 2021. So fingers crossed, it's going to be Q1 of 2021. And after they do that, they spoke about on the conference call, they're going to be opening up sales again for space flights. They also gave an update on the second spaceship. Now, this was originally supposed to be done by the end of the year. I have that in red here. But now they're expecting Q1 of 2021. So they talked about, COVID-19 protocols in this process, and this is basically the reason that they're giving for this being pushed back. But again, this is something very important if they're going to start doing these flights soon in the future. In terms of the commercial update, the biggest thing here was they were restarting ticket sales in 2021 following Branson's flight, of course, but they're retiring one small step program on December 31st, 2020. They said on the conference call that they're going to basically be calling up these people because the pool has reached about 900 participants. That's up about 200 since last quarter. So good news there that that's growing. But they're basically going to be calling those people and seeing if they can convert them into the future astronaut community, which remains at about 600. So this is going to be very pivotal going forward. Like, we're not going to be focusing so much on this, future astronaut pool. We're going to be actually looking into test flights and actually starting flights. So if you want to know how the company is going to do, if you look into next year, I think this is going to be the main, indication of how this company is doing, because we're seeing the shift. They're starting to, focus from going from deposits to test flights to actually considering, having paid flights in the future. In terms of their financials here, again, we said that they had no revenue, of course. Selling, general and administrative expenses increased here from $26 million to $30.9 million. And some of this actually had to do with stock-based compensation. We'll get back to that in a little bit. And again, net loss of $76.9 million versus $62.5 million a quarter ago. Looking at their cash flow statement, again, we were talking about stock-based compensation. I really don't like to see this too much, and I mentioned this in my last video. It was $8.6 million this quarter. That was up from $5.5 million a year ago. And I understand, this is an important part of corporations. This is an important part of incentives, absolutely. But a company that's this, this new and not producing results yet. I don't like to see that high, but I don't know, guys. Let me know what you think about that down below. Also here, customer deposits, again, increased by 1.456 million. Love to see that, because we can see the quarter before it was a drop of $1.53 million. And on September 30th, that quarter, that would be Q3 of 2019, it was actually an increase as well. So kind of bouncing around there, but we're going to stop focusing on that. So that would be kind of nice not having to track that and actually see how many future astronauts we're going to have. Again, I'm going to talk about this after here, but they had some common stock that they issued to get cash. There's a $460.2 million proceeds from issuance of common stocks. So the net increase in cash for the quarter was $381.665 million. So as you can see, that was kind of a short report compared to the ones in the past. They're starting to focus, take their focus away from deposits to test flights. There wasn't even a slide on that on this one, but it was a lot easier to digest. A couple other things I didn't mention. Well, I mentioned this one that were on the conference call, but a couple things that you guys should be aware of. Again, you're going to see that 400-ish, rough, who knows, dollars revenue next quarter. Again, I also mentioned that the test flight has moved, so I would consider that somewhat of a negative, but to be expected 1 month. What's 1 month, right? Also, I mentioned this last quarter as well. They're going to capitalize their vehicle costs once they have a proven test flight with 4 people. So right now it's under research and development, and then it's going to be capitalized into a different area. And we'll talk about that when that comes. But just keep in mind that you're going to see that change. You're going to see that move on the financial statements if you're looking at them that close. Dilution, again. I've become bullish on this considering what's happened, but again, you got to keep in mind when dilution happens and is significant, all things remaining equal, that should drive the stock price down. This one was about 11%. That's pretty big because they don't have that many shares outstanding, but they issued 23.6 million shares at 1950, so it was about $440 million. So that's where they're bolstering that cash position, which is great. I mean, we see companies do it, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to affect the stock price, right? But something to keep in mind, and something that they'll probably continue to do, considering they have a low amount of shares right now, to maintain their cash position so they can move forward operationally. So overall, this quarter was actually changed my mind quite a bit in terms of, I thought it was way overvalued before. If what they're saying is true and they can generate $1 billion, this company could do well. Personally, still way too rich for me. You can look at my first video I made on them. Go back in my channel where I kind of go through what they said they expect their earnings are, or how much revenue they're going to generate rather. And the valuation just doesn't work for me. But I do like to see these things. I like to see that, of course, they're building their cash. I like to see the deposits increasing. And I like that they're changing this focus. They're actually looks like they're going to be pushing forward. So right now we don't have that much information that's new, but going into the next quarter and the quarter after that, we should really see what they're doing. And I hope that they're going to report how many actual astronauts they have, not future astronauts, I believe is what they call them, that are actually going to be going in, and are they going to get Richard Branson up into space, all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be very interesting over the next year to see what's going on. Love to know what you guys think about this quarter. Comment down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, guys. And that's going to be it for today. We'll see you in the next one.